everyone. I'm Rebecca Bushby. I'm the Acting Director of Curatorial Collections and Exhibitions here at the Museum. I'd like to welcome you to the Museum and to this, the fourth session, or fourth symposium, in the MAS Professional Series. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I'd like to introduce Uncle Chicca Madden to deliver Welcome to Country.
Good, thank you. Good morning, folks. My name is Charles Madden, but known around the inner city as Chicca. Now, that's a nickname that I got many, many years ago, going to Redfern Public School, which is now NCIE, the National Centre for Indigenous Excellence. Folks, I'm from Gadigal land, Aboriginal land. That's the land we're on at the moment. For many, many years, I've been involved with different Aboriginal organisations in and around the city. I've been a director with the Aboriginal Medical Service at Redfern for over 40 years. Also a director with the Redfern Aboriginal Housing Company, Aboriginal Hostels Australia, and the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, where I am still a very active member. Got to mention it, folks, also a life member of the Redfern All Blacks Rugby League Football Club. Folks, for many, many years I've worked and lived in and around the inner city. I'd like to take this opportunity this morning to extend a warm and sincere welcome to any of my Aboriginal brothers and sisters, non-Aboriginal brothers and sisters who may have travelled here onto Gadigal land. If we have any brothers and sisters from the Torres Strait or further far across the seas, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. The Gadigal clan is one of 29 that makes up the Eora Nation. The Eora Nation is bordered by three distinctive landmarks. We have the Hawkesbury River to the north, the Nepean to the west, and the Georges River to the south. Those three rivers form the boundaries of the Eora Nation. Folks, if you've travelled across this great city of ours this morning, the state or this great country, welcome. Welcome to Gadigal land. Enjoy your stay. Have a safe and trouble-free trip home. Once again, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you. Enjoy the morning. Thanks, mate.
Thank you, Uncle Chicca. As I mentioned, this is our fourth symposium in the MAS Professional Series, a series that aims to foster an open and creative dialogue, providing the opportunity to network, share information, and deliver and develop a collaborative approach to addressing important issues facing the museum sector. Archives plays an important role in the life of collecting institutions. However, it's possible not to give them much thought. Most of us think of archives as simply being there to provide documentation of history, of objects, of people, and of events. But archives don't occupy a neutral space. There are decisions and judgments made all the time about what is collected, who and what such archives are about. These decisions determine the way that history is created and retold. There are also important questions about access. Who gets to view the archives? And how might such viewing have an emotional impact on particular communities whose histories have been documented in ways that tell a distorted or partial story? This symposium is important because it puts the archives on centre stage to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and create new understandings about control, agency, power, choice, and access, including the act of repurposing of archives in the creative process, work undertaken by artists and curators. We at MAS are very happy to be having the discussion with our symposium partner, the State Library of New South Wales, an Australian institution that houses many important and valued archives. We'd ask that you keep your phones on, but switch them to silent. We encourage you to share your thoughts on Twitter about the symposium and use the hashtag, which is here, MASSym. Make sure you keep that going throughout the morning. That would be fantastic. And I'd also like to introduce our symposium chairs. Richard Neville, Librarian and Director, Education and Scholarship at the State Library of New South Wales, and Judy Kearns, Head of Strategic Collections here at MAS. I'd like to thank you and hope that you enjoy the morning session. Thanks.
Well, thank you. My name is Richard Neville, as was just said, and I seem to be the only male on the panel today. So I don't know what that says about collecting. A few housekeeping rules. If you need to go to the toilet, it's an exciting adventure. It's on this level, but you kind of turn right and keep on going through all sorts of really quite dramatic corridors, and I got a bit lost. It's a bit of a white corridor. But anyway, there are toilets there. We're going to have morning tea at 10:20, and as after the two speakers finish, we'll have questions at the end. So we'll just go into the papers first before we get on to your conversation with our speakers. It's, as Beck was saying, I mean, archives are germane, particularly to what our library does. We say we have about 13 linear kilometres of archives, and they're critical to what we do. I think much more recently, over the last couple of decades, people have begun to think a lot more about why and how we collect. Part of that is the legislative impost, and also, I suppose, the audit requirements that governments now put upon us in terms of expending public money, significant public monies on these things. But I also think the questions about how we make our collections accessible have significantly changed the way we do things. And I think Kirsten and Kathy are going to be talking about, for instance, with our collections, the extent with which we contain Indigenous information which Indigenous people have had no agency in collecting. So how can we kind of return that and allow people to talk about that kind of, for Indigenous people to respond to what we have. And I think also the issues of the lack of voices we have in our archives. You know, it is often said that at the library people were not allowed to view the convict records until the 1960s because people were concerned, the library was particularly concerned that people might discover things about their past which they were not particularly happy about because we have so many convict records. Yet in a way, I think the fact we have more records of working class people, criminals, in the 19th century than we do in the 21st century. We are very poor at collecting contemporary voices of people who have no agency to speak for themselves. So how do we address those kinds of questions? Fascinating topic, and delighted that the State Library can participate, and it's been a great, I would have to acknowledge Kylie Budge and Rachel Franks, who have been instrumental in kind of working up this relationship. So our first speaker is going to be Professor Kathy Bowery, whose expertise relates primarily to intellectual property, which many people think, certainly at our library, they groan whenever you mention the word copyright, but in fact it's such an important part of what we do. So she is going to be talking about, she has researched on the Western laws affecting Indigenous cultural and intellectual property, which is again a huge issue for us. And I think it's going to be a fascinating talk about the way Indigenous collections are kept and created. And following Kathy, we'll have Agatha Goth-Snape, who is an artist, but we'll talk a bit more about her after we've heard from Kathy.